Hi, it's Steph, and we're at Lowe's, and we're going to take a look at all of their March inventory. They've received some fruit trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and spring planted summer blooming bulbs. So lots of new beautiful things to look at. So let's go ahead and take a look. Such an exciting time of year when the garden centers start receiving all of their inventory. And here we have some shrubs that are still dormant, but they have buds on them that are swollen, and any day now they're going to be all leafed out and blooming. Starting here in this corner with some dogwoods. Now, dogwood is a wonderful shrub for an area that you might have in the garden that stays a little bit wet. These like moist soil and they can tolerate quite a bit of moisture. And they're also a wonderful shrub for winter interest. As you can see here, this is a variety of red twig dogwood, and you can see all those beautiful red sticks. So imagine if you have some snow, how beautiful those vibrant red branches would look. Now, this is a first edition shrub, and the variety is called Cayenne. And let's see how big it gets. 6 to 8 feet in height and 8 to 10 foot in width. And it provides winter interest. And the other thing about dogwoods is that they're extremely hardy. So these are hardy down to a zone 4 and up through a gardening zone number 9. And let's see what size container this is. These are in 2 gallons for $27.98. So I'm happy to report that the prices seem very similar to last season. And some forsythia. So you can see here all of the buds that are getting ready to bloom. And forsythia is a quintessential spring blooming shrub with these really pretty and vibrant yellow flowers. A lot of people use these as hedging or as screening between properties, and you get this really pretty color in very early spring. So this variety here is Linwood Gold, which is a very common variety of forsythia. These like full sun. And forsythia, let's see how big they get. They get pretty tall, so 10 to 12 feet in height and 10 to 12 feet in width, which makes them great for screening and hedging. And they're hardy down to a zone 4, so very hardy. This is a 2-gallon container for $22.98. So if you were to plant this out in your garden, you would enjoy some spring blooms this season. Now, as long as the soil is workable and you can dig into it, then it is good to go and you can get this planted. If you wanted to start with a larger forsythia, they also have these B&B or ball and burlap forsythia available that you can see are much taller. So this would create an instant hedge for you. It's also the Linwood Gold variety, and let's see how much these are. The ball and burlap are $32.98, so you're only paying an extra $10 for a much larger mature specimen. A beautiful crab apple. This one is the Prairie Fire, so it has red leaves, which is really beautiful. Look at that. So not only do you get the blooms in the spring, but then you have this really pretty red foliage. So this one here, let's see, it's a full sun tree, and these are pretty compact or medium-sized trees at about 20 feet in height and 20 feet in width at maturity. So you need to give them at least 15-foot spacing, and they're hardy down to a zone 4, so really hardy. And these are $42.98, and they're a 4.5-gallon size tree. And one more quick note about the Prairie Fire crabapple. Even though it's called a crab apple, it is not an apple-bearing tree, so no fruit out of this tree. This is simply a really beautiful ornamental tree. And some plum trees that are also really budded up. Look at that. Now, this is a variety of plum called Santa Rosa plum, and these trees like full sun. Now, as with many of the fruit trees, they typically need a pollinator tree, and this one is giving you that disclosure right here. This fruit needs a pollinator. See back for details. What that means is that you'll need to have more than one plum tree in order to get fruit, so that they can pollinate one another. This particular plum variety gets pretty large at 20 to 30 feet in height and 20 to 30 feet in width, and it is hardy down to -10 degrees or a zone 5. And it will provide the list for you of which varieties to use for pollinators. So any of these trees here will be a pollinator for the Santa Rosa plum. And these are $59.98 for a 5-gallon. And some shade trees. Here we have an American beech, and look how large and beautiful that is. So with many of the shade trees, they tend to get pretty large in size, so you definitely want to give them some space. This tree here is a 5-gallon for $79.98, and they need full sun. And let's see how large the American beech gets. 40 to 80 feet in height and 40 to 80 feet in width. So quite a large, beautiful specimen that needs a lot of space and very hardy down to a zone 3. Some Rose of Sharon trees. Something to note about Rose of Sharon is that some of the older varieties can be pretty invasive. Once they start dropping seeds, you'll start getting Rose of Sharon seedlings everywhere. My parents have a neighbor that have a hedge of Rose of Sharon of the older varieties, and they do drop a lot of seeds and can become problematic. Some of the newer varieties are sterile and would not do that. But this here is a Rose of Sharon tree. It is flowering, has beautiful blossoms, and an upright growth habit. They bloom in summer and fall. For $69.98, you're getting a 5-gallon container. And they stay pretty compact at only about 10 feet in height, 8 feet in width. And they're hardy down to a zone 5 or negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And some more ornamental trees, some magnolias, and some dogwoods. So look at these beautiful magnolia leaves. Now this variety is the Bracken's Brown Beauty, and it has stunning foliage. Look at this. Beautiful, large, shiny leaves. And these are even beautiful in Christmas arrangements. Now the back of the leaves turn brown as they mature. So you can see here some of them already have that signature brown look on the back of the magnolia leaves. Really gorgeous. Now these can get messy because they drop foliage, but the tree is absolutely gorgeous. Here you can see in the photo a little bit closer those beautiful brown undersides on the foliage of this magnolia. They also bloom, and they have a really large, beautiful white blossom that is really, really fragrant. It's just a really gorgeous specimen tree. I have a friend who has one by a greenhouse, and it's stunning. So these require full sun, and they get pretty large. They have an average size of 20 to 30 feet in height and 15 to 20 feet in width. And they are hardy down to zone 6. The Bracken's Brown Beauty Magnolia is in a 4.5-gallon container for $54.98. And some more ornamental trees that are all budded up and ready to burst into bloom this spring. And this here is a Kousa dogwood. Now these are beautiful specimen trees as well. You often see them in the front yard, but these are actually an understory tree. They prefer part sun and really nice planted under larger, taller shade trees. Now the Kousa dogwood is pretty slow growing in my experience. But they are about a medium-sized tree, I would say. They bloom in spring. This here is a 4.5-gallon container for $36.98, and they get to be 20 feet in height and 20 feet in width. And they are hardy down to negative 10 degrees or a zone 5. And here's a flowering tree that can be pretty tempting because the flowering is pretty profuse and it's a real pretty tree, but they're a bit problematic. The Cleveland pear tree can be pretty invasive, and also as they get more mature, they have the tendency to split open in storms and get damaged. So this is one that I would probably stay clear from and look for another variety of pretty flowering tree instead. There are so many buds on these trees, which is so exciting. They are going to be bursting with blooms, and in this case, fruit. So this is a peach tree, and peach trees are one type of fruit tree that does not need a pollinator tree in order to set fruit. I had to peel back the corner of this price tag here just to confirm for you to see that it says this fruit does not need a pollinator. So in all of the fruit trees, a peach would be a good variety if you only have limited space and you want to grow one fruit tree. This could be a good choice. And this variety is the Red Haven peach. They prefer full sun. And this variety gets to be 20 to 30 feet in height and 20 to 30 feet in width and hardy down to a zone 5. These are $64.98 and they're a 5-gallon. Here's another variety of crabapple. This one's called Sugar Time, and it looks like it has a pretty upright habit. It likes full sun, blooms in spring. These are 4.5 gallons for $42.98. And let's see how big these get. It looks like it's a medium-sized tree at 15 to 18 feet in height and 15 to 18 feet in width, hardy down to a zone 4. And that is a white crabapple. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know that I love Japanese maples, and this here is a green Japanese maple. It's an Acer palmatum. This is a beautiful feature tree. Most commonly you see the bloodgood in a front yard as a specimen tree, and the bloodgood has red foliage, but this one has green foliage. They like full sun. They can tolerate part shade. And a lot of varieties actually prefer shade, but this variety here is noted that it can take sun, and the bloodgoods can take quite a good deal of sun as well. The mature size is 15 feet in height to 15 feet in width. These are average size trees, and they're hardy down to zone 5. $109 for this tree, and it's in a 4.5 gallon. Another stunning magnolia is the Magnolia. This is what they call the tulip magnolias. It has a really gorgeous pink bloom. And this here is a 4.5 gallon for $44.98. They bloom in spring. In fact, right now they already have all of their fuzzy buds and getting ready to bloom. And then once they're done blooming, they'll put out all of their foliage. And Magnolia has that traditional shiny broadleaf foliage. These are a part sun shrub. The Magnolia gets to be 8 feet in height and 10 feet in width, and they need 6 to 8 foot spacing, hardy down to a zone 4, so really hardy. Here is a newer improved variety of Rose of Sharon, and this is by Proven Winners, and it is called the White Chiffon Rose of Sharon. They have really beautiful double flowers, so they look ruffly. They like sun and they bloom in summer, and they are hardy in USDA zones 5 through 9 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they get to be 8 to 12 feet in height and 6 to 10 feet in width. And look how beautiful that is. And this beautiful Rose of Sharon is in a 5 gallon container for $69.98. Lowe's has also started to receive all of their evergreens for hedging and privacy fencing. So if you're looking to create a living fence this spring, they're getting a bunch of inventory now. So it'd be the perfect time to pick up the number of trees that you need to create your living fence. So let's see which ones they have in stock. The emerald green arborvitae. Now this isn't a good option if you have a narrow space that you would like to plant, because this doesn't get very wide, this variety. The downside to the emerald green arborvitae is that they are not as deer resistant. So if you deal with the deer in your garden, they sometimes will chew up to where they can reach, and then you'll end up with a misshapen tree with just some greenery on top. So if you deal with deer, you might want to opt for, say, the green giant arborvitae. But just as the name suggests, they do get much larger. So the emerald green arborvitae likes full sun. These trees, arborvitae in general, like water. So when you plant a new living fence, make sure that you water regularly until your roots establish, or during any times of drought. These are $59.98 and they're 5 gallon. And the emerald green arborvitae gets to be 15 feet in height and 4 feet in width. And they are hardy down to a zone 3, so really hardy. One more thing to note about these evergreens and these arborvitae, if you're buying multiples, they have this here that says contractor pack pricing. So if you purchase 16 or more, it looks like you would get 10% off. So where they would have cost $59.98, now you're paying $53.98. So if you need quite a few, something to think about. And here are the green giant arborvitaes. Now the green giant arborvitaes have a different texture than the emerald green. These have more of a ferny, loose texture, where the green giant are a little bit tighter and more upright. These get pretty large, and they also get a bit of a bronze coloring in the cooler winter months. My neighbor has a hedge of these and they've grown in beautifully. The green giant arborvitae likes full sun. This is a 5.5 gallon container for $59.98. And they also have the contractor pricing on these. They get to be 30 feet in height and 15 feet in width. And they are hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit or a zone 5. Now, if you want to make a living fence, you'd want to space these at approximately 5 feet apart on center, but it all depends how fast you want them to grow in and how big you buy your trees. So something to look up when you're doing a fence is proper spacing. And because creating a living fence can be pretty expensive, you can also start with smaller specimens. And they do have a smaller size of both the emerald green and the green giant arborvitae. So they have 2 gallon containers of the green giant arborvitae for $29.98. 2 gallon size of the emerald green arborvitae for also $29.98. Green is a yew, Y-E-W. Now these have really pretty texture. They have a fine texture and they're evergreen, very different than some of the other foliage on evergreens, and they make a really pretty contrast in the garden. You can see here with some weeping spruces, how they make, even with the same color, they look different, and it provides a lot of interest. Something to keep in mind about the yews is that some varieties are not deer resistant. So this Taxus densiformis is not deer resistant, but some varieties like the plum yew would be more deer resistant. So yews like full sun, and this variety here gets to be 4 feet in height and 6 feet in width, and it is hardy down to zone 4 or negative 20 degrees. And these containers here are $49.98, and they're a 4.5 gallon container. Some bare root fruit, and they have some grapes. This one here is called Himrod. It looks like a golden grape, and now these are still dormant. You can see the bare root just looks like a bunch of sticks, but then you plant them in your garden and they start to leaf out. These are typically a less expensive way of buying a fruit, or fruit tree is bare root, but they sometimes take a little bit longer to get going and producing a good amount of fruit. So these here, you get one plant for $10.98. They have some blueberries, and this one's called Blue Crop. Now, blueberry is another one that will take about 3 years before you start getting any significant fruit production, but they are also a great shrub to add to your landscape because they can be an ornamental shrub. They have flowers in the spring before they set fruit, and they also have really pretty fall color with red foliage. Now you can see that these have some buds on them. Look at that. So you'll plant them out and then they'll start to leaf out. $10.98 for one bare root. Hardy kiwi, and kiwi is delicious fruit, and I've even heard that recently you can eat the peel. So if you know about that, drop me a comment. $10.98 for one of them. It says it's prolific, and it will give you the planting steps or instructions on the back of these packages as well. They have a couple of different varieties of raspberries. Now, raspberries, you'd want to do some research for the ones that have the best taste, and you can even get different varieties so that they will bear fruit at different times of year. This one here is called Lantham, and you get one for $10.98. Great to make jams and jellies, and even just for fresh garden snacking. This variety here is called Heritage. And how big does this one get? The Heritage also needs about 3 foot spacing, and it says average size 2 to 3 feet. They do get pretty wide, I would say, but you can prune these each year. And what happens is you go through and you prune the prior year's canes off, and you leave this year's canes up. So it's important to recognize what those are once you start growing them. And you can see this one's starting to come out of dormancy here with the heat of the store. It's starting to push out some growth. So that's something good to look for. When you're looking at these bare roots, you want to look for any sign of growth that tells you that this is a viable plant. And this raspberry has a really deep, beautiful color. It almost looks burgundy, and the variety is called Brandywine. And this one here, let's see, it also says 3 foot spacing. So I would do a little bit more research. I think they're just putting 3 feet on all of these, but I grow raspberries and I know that they can get pretty wide. I would say closer to 3 to 4 feet wide, but they can certainly be pruned. And this is hardy. This variety is hardy in zones 4 through 8. And here we have one of my favorite fruits, the fig. Now, I do have a fig tree, but the variety is called Desert King. And here in my zone 6, I do have to bring it in and protect it for the winter. But this variety here, the Chicago Hardy, appears to be a little hardier at a zone 5 through 10. It says the average size is 10 to 12 feet in height and width. And this might be a good variety for me to try. $10.98 for the Hardy Fig Chicago. Now let's check out some of these varieties of these really pretty and vibrant colored spring planted summer blooming bulbs. Now, even though your local garden centers and nurseries might be starting to get some of these bare root bulbs in, they cannot be planted yet until all chance of frost has passed in your zone. That is the case for things like caladiums and dahlias. However, there are some things like the gladiolas and the oriental lilies, even the iris, that as long as your soil is thawed and workable, you can start planting those in now. This beautiful orange one with the white tips here is called Color Spectacle, and you're getting 2 bulbs or 2 tubers for $9.98. Now, these are in clear bags, which actually makes it really easy for you to sort of inspect your tuber. And what you're looking for is you just want to make sure that they don't look shriveled, that they look kind of plump, and that there might be some signs of life. At this point, they might even start to push out some eyes, and that gives you an indicator that the tuber is viable. You also can check for weight. If you're holding it and it feels a little bit light, then it could mean that the tuber is a little bit dehydrated. And that is a step or tip that you can use with things that have the green bags where you can't necessarily see the tuber, but these clear ones make it really easy to inspect. They have some gladiolas, and the gladiolas is a mixed bright variety, and you get 25 bulbs for $9.98. And this feels pretty heavy, so these are pretty nice bulbs. And you would just take a look at them, make sure you don't see any signs of mold. And these can be planted out pretty soon. Now, gladiolas are deer resistant. They're pretty tall flowers, so they sometimes require some staking. I have found that if I plant them up against a fence where my vegetable garden is, they stay pretty upright. You can see here that they get to be 48 to 60 inches in height, and they are hardy in zones 8 through 10. And it also gives you information as far as how many bulbs per square foot to plant, as well as depth. Now, I will tell you that I'm in a zone 6 and I've left mine in the ground and they've come back for a few years. It could be because they're in a little bit of a microclimate and the leaves from my oak tree blow over in the spot where they are, so it probably keeps them insulated and they make it in my zone. Here's another variety of really pretty gladiolas. This one is called Tropical Breeze Mixed, and it looks like a variety of orange with red and yellow. And you're also getting 25 bulbs for $9.98. And here's something that I grew for the first time last year, caladium. This is a beautiful shade plant. So if you have a shady spot in the garden, you can plant some of these and it'll offer a lot of interest with how beautiful the foliage is. I actually grew mine in a container and they make a really pretty container plant. And I grew a white variety, just like you see in the corner there. This mix, you get 4 bulbs for $9.98. It says it's container friendly, and the bulbs look very similar to, say, the gladiola bulbs. Okay, you can see the corms or bulbs, and again, you're just inspecting them for mold and making sure they look pretty healthy. And the instructions to plant them are right here. I'm doing this one-handed, so I'm sorry about that. They get to be 12 to 24 inches in height, and they are hardy in zones 9 through 10. So mine I did bring in at the end of the season, and I'm going to try growing them again this year. Here's another really pretty dahlia. It looks like it's white with some red tips. It's called Lady Darlene, and you get 2 of them for $9.98. Tubers look pretty good. And here is a variety that I'm actually thinking about bringing home today. The Dahlia Milena. It's a real pretty pink one, and I know someone who grew this one last year from one of these tubers that they bought at the box store, and it was a really prolific producer, lots of blooms. So I'm going to give this one a shot. And you get 2 bulbs for $9.98. And these are in pine shavings, so it makes it really easy to inspect your tubers. Here's a decorative mixed variety. You get 3 bulbs and they'll be a surprise. You won't know which ones you're going to get until they start blooming, which can also be fun. $9.98. This mixed blend here, the height says that it varies from 36 to 40 inches in height, and they're only hardy in zones 8 through 10. So if you live in a zone lower than an 8, you will have to overwinter your dahlias, which means digging up the tubers after you have had your first frost and storing them for the winter in somewhere that is cool and dry and stays about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. For me, that's my garage. I store them in my garage and they seem to do pretty well there. Here's another really popular variety of yellow dahlia, and it is the Kelvin Floodlight. This is a dinner plate size bloom, and of course the dinner plate size are gorgeous. They have really stunning blooms, really impactful because they're really big, but they are hard to arrange with because one bloom takes up your whole vase, but really beautiful. So you get 2 for $9.98, and it will tell you again the height, which is important to look at when you are starting to arrange and plant your dahlia so that you don't shade out shorter varieties with the taller ones. So the height is something important to pay attention to. 36 to 48 inches in height. And these are also summer to fall, so these are later season bloomers. So you'll plant your dahlias when all chance of frost has passed. For me, that is somewhere at the beginning of May. Look at this pretty pastel mixed dahlia. You get 3 tubers for $9.98. Oh my gosh, there's a real pretty one here. This fuchsia one is stunning. Let's see, this variety is called Miro Star. And it looks like it's fuchsia with a little bit of a white trim on the edge here on the tips. It's a dinner plate size bloom, so this is another really large one, and you get 2 bulbs for $9.98. And this one, again, it seems like all of the heights on these are going to measure 36 to 40 inches in height. A real pretty one that I've seen for a few years, and I've always been tempted by it. It has a smaller, dainty bloom, but it's very pretty. It is the Kelsey Annie Joy, and you get 2 bulbs for $9.98. It says great for cut flowers, multiple blooms per bulb. And oh, this one's a little bit shorter in stature. Look at that. So this one gets to be 24 to 32 inches in height, and you get 2 of them, and these you can inspect them pretty well, and they seem pretty nice. Some lilies. These are the Asiatic lilies, and this is a mixed variety. You get 8 bulbs for $9.98. Now these you can probably start planting out now in spring once the ground is thawed out, and just add some bone meal or some bulb tone into the hole when you plant these, and you'll get some beautiful blooms. Most times they will bloom first season, so if you plant these this spring, it's likely that you'll get a couple of blooms this summer, but by next year you'll get a good amount of blooms because they will be more mature. They return year after year, so this variety is perennial. And here are some Oriental lilies. I find in my garden that the Asiatic lilies bloom first, and then the Oriental lilies bloom second. And here you get 8 bulbs for $9.98. This is a mixed variety, so different shades of pink and white. I have a white variety like that one there called Casablanca, and it's gorgeous. I have some stargazers. I really like lilies, and they're very fragrant. So these here get to be 36 to 48 inches in height. So this would be a great back of the border type plant. They bloom in summer, and here again you can inspect your bulbs, and those look to be in really good shape. They're already starting to push out some eyes. Here's a really pretty bright red dahlia. So if you like warm colors in your garden, like reds and oranges and yellows, that's a pretty one. Great for cut flowers, multiple blooms per bulb, 2 for $9.98. And these are shorter, so these get to be 18 to 24 inches in height. I would always Google the name of the dahlia just to make sure that what the package says is correct, so that you can confirm the height and plant it in an appropriate spot. So at that height, this would be a good front of the border type plant. Front or middle of the border, I would say. I would say mid. Some Dutch iris. And this is a mix. Now iris are deer resistant, which is great. I deal with deer and they do not touch my iris. I have quite a few. I have Dutch iris, Siberian iris, as well as the Japanese bearded iris, and they don't touch any of them. So you get 40 bulbs for $9.98. And these look also to be in really good shape. You can see here that some of them are already pushing out some growth. And this variety of iris gets to be 20 to 24 inches in height, and they are hardy in zones 5 through 10. They bloom early summer. And some peonies. They have a couple of varieties of peonies. This one here is the Shirley Temple, which is a white variety. I have this one in my garden, and it's really pretty. Now peonies are beautiful spring blooming perennials. They are very fragrant. Let's see how big they get. They're about average size, I would say, 24 to 36 inches usually. So see, it says here 32 to 36 inches in height and in width, and they are hardy in zones 3 through 8. And they like sun to part sun. I would not give them too much shade or they won't bloom very well. And once they're done blooming, you cut back the blooms and you still have really pretty foliage. So here is Peony Shirley Temple. You get 1 tuber for $6.98. Now it does take about 3 years for you to get peonies, or a good amount of peonies, from a bare root, but for the price it makes them really affordable. It's worth the wait. And if you want to add a tropical vibe to your patios or containers this summer, canna lilies are a good option. They have a really pretty tropical looking flower and some big foliage. You can also get some that have dark foliage, but this variety here says that it's mixed. They are deer resistant. You get 3 bulbs for $6.98. And they get to be 28 to 32 inches in height, and they bloom in the summer. Now here's a plant that has a reputation for being a shade plant, but I have a neighbor who has a really large one in some sun. So I think that bleeding hearts, which are a perennial, can take a little more sun than they say they can. But nonetheless, this is considered a part shade plant. You get 2 bulbs here, or 2 bare roots, for $6.98. This is called Dicentra spectabilis. It is deer resistant and hummingbird friendly. I do have some in my garden. The deer do not touch it. And let's see, these get to be 28 to 36 inches in height, and they are hardy in zones 2 through 9. So a very hardy perennial. Peony sorbet. This one I have as well. It's got a really pretty roughly center, and you get 1 tuber for $6.98. Different shades of pink with a little bit of a cream ruffle in the center. And this variety gets to be 28 to 36 inches in size. Blooms late spring to early summer. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. Now, a lot of times when you see your peony buds, they might get some ants on them. The ants are fine. They're just feeding on the nectar. And shortly after you see the ants, your peony will bloom. So the ants, in this case, are a friend, not a foe. And liatris, also known as gay feather, and this variety of liatris is called Blazing Star. And all of the liatris that I have in my garden was actually started just like this, with bare roots. Now in this package you're getting 40 bulbs for $9.98. What you don't want to do is take these 40 bulbs and plant them all spaced out. What I would recommend is doing, say, 5 groups of 8 bulbs and planting them together in clusters. Liatris is deer resistant, it's also perennial, and the pollinators absolutely love it. Now, in terms of size, it gets to be 30 to 36 inches in height, and it is hardy in zones 2 through 9. And you want to plant your bulbs at a depth of 4 inches. It says partial shade. I have mine planted in full sun, and they do really well. So I would say that these are a sun to part sun. They will bloom best with some sun. They have some strawberry bare roots too. Now strawberries can be pretty invasive, so after you have a couple, they start sending out their runners and they grow and grow. So if you like strawberries, they're a good fruit to plant. They are perennial, and there is June bearing and ever bearing varieties. So the June bearing will set all of their fruit in around June, and the ever bearing will fruit sporadically throughout the summer. So this is Ozark Beauty, and they also have TriStar. I'm not sure which one would be considered June bearing and which one would be considered ever bearing, but they do have 2 varieties, and you can look that up to see. So here it will tell you how far apart to space them and when they bloom. So strawberries first will set a flower, and then they will set their fruit. Some blackberry, and this one is called Chester. Blackberries also like full sun, and you get 1 bare root in here. And they get 4 to 6 feet in height and in width, and they harvest in midsummer, and they're hardy in zones 5 through 9. And they have another variety of grape here also called, let's see, it's called Mars. And this looks like a a black grape, and likes full sun. They also have Suffolk, which is a red grape, available. They also have some seed potatoes, and this variety here is called Russet Burbank. Seed potatoes are pretty easy to make. If you buy some organic potatoes, because the regular potatoes that are not organic, they sometimes spray them to keep them in the grocery store from sprouting. But an organic potato is something you can use. Once it starts growing some eyes, it is time to use those as seed potatoes. But you can also buy them here, and you get 4 for $3.98. And that is a russet variety. They also have the Norland, the red Norland, which is a really popular red variety. And you also get 4 for $3.98. Now, potatoes are a cool season crop, so you can plant these now in spring. And I recently read a tradition where you're supposed to plant your potatoes out around St. Patrick's Day. So if you are Irish or you've been growing potatoes for a long time, let us know. What is the story behind planting potatoes on or around St. Patrick's Day? Look at this pretty dahlia. It's called Fire and Ice, and it's a pretty red orange color with a yellow center and some white. It looks like it might be a little bit shorter at 18 to 24 inches. So this would be like a front to middle of the border type dahlia. And you get 1 tuber for $6.98. And look at this pretty lily. It's an Asiatic lily called Landini, and it has a really pretty dark flower. You get 4 bulbs for $6.98. And they bloom in the summer. They're hardy in zones 3 through 9. And again, lilies are perennial, so they'll come back for you year after year once you plant them out in your garden. And some tiger lilies. It looks like you get 4 bulbs for $6.98. They have a pretty orange coloring with some speckling. And these get to be 36 to 40 inches in height, and they bloom in summer. And they like full sun. This dahlia looks like it's painted, and it's called Painted Madam. It's like an orangey color with some red striping, and you get 1 tuber for $6.98. And the Blue Boy dahlia. I grew this variety last year. Mine turned out to be a little bit more pink than, say, this lavender purple, but it was really beautiful. And you get 1 tuber for $6.98. And this one here gets 32 to 40 inches in height, blooms in summer, zones 8 through 10. So if you're in a zone 8 or above, you can likely keep these in the ground, and they will return for you year after year. They're a little more work for us here in the colder zones. And Crazy Love. This is another really pretty one. I have a similar one to Crazy Love called Ferncliff Illusion. It's a really pretty white with a little bit of lavender on the tips and some yellow in the center. And you get 1 of the Crazy Love tubers for $6.98. And the height on this one reads 24 to 28 inches in height. Here is a gorgeous lily. I grow this lily in my garden and the blooms are really large, really fragrant, and just really pretty and eye-catching. It is the Casablanca lily. It's an Oriental lily variety and you get 6 bulbs for $6.98. Which is actually a really decent price. And these make more of an impact when you plant them in a group. So you can either plant all 6 together in a grouping or you can do 2 groups of 3. But these are a pretty lily. They're pretty tall too. So this variety here gets to be 36 to 48 inches in height. And they are hardy in zones 4 through 9 and they are perennial. Now, if you're not familiar with the term perennial, perennial means that it comes back year after year, and annual means that it would only last that one season, bloom, and when the frost comes, it dies off and does not return. So perennials are great investments because they come back year after year. And here's another variety of lily called Oriental Lily Lake Carey. It looks like a very pretty pink, and you get 6 bulbs for $6.98. And let's check the height on these. This variety looks like it gets 36 to 40 inches in height and it is hardy in zones 4 through 9. I'm finding that Lowe's has a different variety of dahlia tubers than Home Depot. So if you haven't checked out my Home Depot video, I have 2 Home Depot videos in the last several weeks that show all of their varieties. And today we're checking out these here at Lowe's. But look at this really pretty one. It is yellow and white and it sort of looks like an egg to me, doesn't it? Very sweet looking. And this dahlia is called Seattle and you get 1 tuber for $6.98. Let's see how tall this one gets. 24 to 28 inches, so a middle of the border. Now you can grow dahlias in their designated space or you can also incorporate them as part of your planting beds. And they look really pretty for some late season, late summer, early fall color. And look at this red one. It has almost like a really dark maroon center and the color gets lighter on the outside. That is stunning. It's called Fabuki Maroon. 1 tuber for $6.98. And this one here says that it gets 36 to 40 inches in height. And I've grown this variety before too. It's really pretty. It's bright. It's pink and yellow, and it's what they call a cactus style dahlia. This one here also is 1 tuber for $6.98. And I like that you get 1 tuber so that you don't have to stress about where to plant multiples if you want to grow many different varieties in a small garden space. So here, this one gets 20 to 24 inches in height. The Tahiti Sunrise Dahlia. Another pretty fuchsia, yellow, and white variety, and this one is called Dahlia Hawaii. And the Dahlia Hawaii, 24 to 36 inches in height. Lowe's also has extra large elephant ears. Now these are a great foliage plant that you can plant in the summer, and they're quite large. Look at this. It's like the size of a melon. Huge. And you can keep these from year to year too. So after you grow them this year, you would lift the tuber and save them, or the corm or bulb, whatever they call elephant ears. I'm pretty sure it's a bulb. You will save it from year to year. You can put it in a paper grocery bag and hold them over in a cool, dark spot until next season where you can plant them out again. Now, elephant ears, also known as colocasia, and you get 1 bulb and it gives you these really huge tropical leaves. They're great for containers. And let's see here. It shows you how to plant it. You want to look for the eye on the top of the bulb and plant that upwards. And that is where all of your growth is going to come from. So, elephant ears. And now Milo's doesn't have the Proven Winners boxes. I'm not sure if that was a Home Depot exclusive, but they do have some boxes of bulbs as well. And they have these here, garden perennials. Now a garden perennial, as we mentioned, was one that comes back year after year. And this is Aguilegia, also known as Columbine. And this is the McKenna Giants mix. Now these are a wonderful part shade to part sun type perennial, but the pollinators absolutely love these. The hummingbirds, they're a great perennial plant. It says they are full sun, partial shade, deer resistant, attract butterflies. You get 7 plants in this container and they are $14.98. Another perennial that is great for a part shade situation is a stilbee. They have these really pretty plumes of blooms in different shades of pink, purples, and whites. I've even seen some that look a bit red, and they have a fern-like foliage. You're going to get 3 plants in this pack here for $14.98. It says partial shade, deer resistant, attracts butterflies. And check out these beautiful peonies. You get a mix of the Hawaiian coral and flame varieties. You get two of them. This is the Hawaiian coral. I have a variety called Coral Charm, and it's very similar looking, really beautiful. And then this is the flame, which also looks similar to something like the Bowl of Beauty peony. But two for $14.98. Rudbeckia, a wonderful perennial for mid-summer blooms. You get these beautiful golden blooms with these dark centers. They're also known as black-eyed Susans, and they are deer resistant in my garden. You get 5 plants for $14.98. Hosta. This is a great perennial for shade, and it is a foliage plant, but it will also send up some bloom stalks. And those bloom stalks with these little lavender, purple, or white blooms, the pollinators absolutely love. The butterflies, the bees, and the hummingbirds. The thing with hostas, though, is if you do have a garden where you have deer, they become deer salad. So something to keep in mind if you do plant hostas is that you might have to protect them by spraying them with some kind of deer and rabbit repellent. I'll actually show you my favorite variety. They do sell it here. I've often bought it at Lowe's, and it works really well. Really stinky, but very effective. And you're going to get 4 hosta bare root plants in this pack for $14.98, and it looks like a mixed variety. This one almost looks like the Patriot hosta, where it has green with the creamy white edges. And a mixed pack of Siberian iris. You get 4 plants for $14.98. It looks like a purple variety and a yellow variety. They also have a liatris pack, and in this pack you get a mix here of purple and the white. It looks pink, but they're like a purple pink color, but white is a little bit more rare to come by, so that is a very pretty mix. 25 bulbs for $14.98, and again, you'll want to plant these bulbs in groupings. Another peony set, and this one here is red gardenia and gardenia, so a red and white peony variety. And some more lilies. This is a pack of Oriental lilies. It looks like you get Presidente and Stargazer, 20 bulbs for $19.98. A Dahlia variety pack, 6 bulbs of this Dahlia decorative mixed for $19.98. Another 5-pack of peony bare roots for $19.98. It's a sorbet mix. Check out these seed potatoes. They're blue. So the variety is just called blue, but they make really cool looking mashed potatoes, right? Some onions. Onions are another cool season crop. With onions here, you're getting the bulb onions that are already started, so you'll get a little bit of a head start. If you're starting seed onions, you want to start those even a little bit sooner because they'll take a little bit of time before they start forming these sets here. But onions, there are different varieties you can grow from seed, long day and short day, depending on where you are. So you want to make sure you pick the right variety for your zone. Here's another type of potato called Kennebec, which is another popular white potato. Asparagus. Asparagus is a perennial vegetable. Now, a lot of vegetables you plant one season and then they're done, but asparagus is one that you plant and then it comes back year after year. It takes about 3 years for your asparagus to get established and to start giving you a good amount for harvesting, but they're a great perennial type vegetable to have in the garden. And you get 3 bare root asparagus plants for $3.98. And some rhubarb, which seems to be a really popular thing for people to grow these days. The variety is Victoria, and you get 1 for $3.98. And you also have some seed garlic. Now, garlic in our zone here is typically grown in the fall, so I'm not sure that this would do anything, but there are 2 varieties of garlic you can get, the soft neck and the hard neck. Here in our zone 6, we should be growing is the hard neck. A good variety is Music. That's the kind that I'm trying this year. And usually plant it between October and November, and you harvest it somewhere around July. So I'm not sure that this were to work out really well here in our zone, but it is available. Maybe you know that it would grow. So let me know in the comments. And if you wanted to try growing a peony from bare root and get a single tuber, here you go. There is 1 for $6.98, and this is a beautiful variety, the Coral Sunset. Another gorgeous dahlia, Mystery Day. This is a dinner plate size bloom, and you get 2 tubers for $9.98. It looks like it's some kind of like maroon with a bit of a fuchsia and white tip. Here's another variety of elephant ear, and this one's called Black Magic Elephant Ear. And what's cool about this one is it's a dark colored leaf. Most of the elephant ears that you're going to find are going to be green. Well, this one is dark burgundy. I grew this variety last year and it was beautiful. So for $7.98, you get 1 bulb, and these are just a regular average size bulb of the Black Magic Elephant Ear. The back of the tag does give you planting instructions. It says 1 bulb per square foot, and they get to be 44 to 48 inches in size. And you want to plant them about 1 inch depth. And you get foliage summer through fall. And my store also has these pre-planted pots. It says they are great for patios. This particular one here has a peony in it, the Alexander Fleming variety. It says just add water, and then you'll get some blooms. Now, I don't know the maturity of that tuber, but hopefully you would get some blooms this season. And then there's also the begonia double mixed, just add water. Now, begonia is like part sun. And there's also a calla lily mix. Now, calla lilies, depending if you plant it in a microclimate against a south-facing wall where it stays a little more protected from the cold and elements, they can come back as a perennial. So here in my zone 6, they are listed as annuals, but depending on where you plant them, they can make a return. So $24.98 for these pre-planted pots of either calla lilies, begonia double mix, or the Alexander Fleming peony. Here's a bonfire patio peach. Now, this is an ornamental peach. So if you wanted to plant this on a patio, as the name suggests, or in a smaller pot somewhere, this only gets to be 5 feet in height by 5 feet in width. And they are hardy down to -10°F or a zone 5. This here is a number, it looks like a 10-gallon container. It's pretty large. Let's see how much. It's in an 8-gallon container for $69.98. And some pretty weeping cherry trees. They call this the fountain cherry tree. And let's see what variety it is and how much it is. The weeping snow fountain cherry. See how it has beautiful white blooms and a weeping habit. Weeping habit trees also help keep them a bit more compact. And this is $169. It's a landscape feature tree. It blooms in spring. Hardy down to zone 5. And some more fruit trees. This here is a Bing cherry, and cherry is a fruit tree that does require a pollinator. These are $64.98 for a 5-gallon container, and on the back of the tag it will tell you a list of the pollinators that you can purchase for the cherry tree. The Bing, the Black Tartarian, etc. And these are hardy down to a zone 5 or -10°F, and this variety gets to be 20 to 30 feet in height and 20 to 30 feet in width. And they have a corkscrew willow here at Lowe's, and these are really cool willow trees because their branches are sort of wavy, which makes them really interesting. And willows in general like soil that stays a bit moist, so if you have a wet spot that you want to plant a tree, a willow is a good option. Now, this here is a 4.5-gallon container for $39.98. It likes sun, and it gets 30 feet in height by 20 feet in width, hardy down to a zone 4. Kefir pear. So this one does need a pollinator. The kefir pear likes full sun. It's $36.98, and it gets to be 20 to 30 feet in height and in width, hardy down to a zone 4. And that is that. Let's see what other varieties of pears they might have. All right, I just see the kefir pear here, so you would definitely need a pollinator in order to get fruit on that, and there is a list on the back of which varieties. So the Baldwin, Bartlett, Bosque, Anjou, and so forth. And let's see, some apples. They have Honeycrisp, also needs a pollinator tree, so you need at least 2 apple trees to get fruit. The Honeycrisp is a delicious variety, and this is $36.98, full sun, and these get 20 to 30 feet in height and in width, hardy down to -20° or zone 4. These will flower in the spring, and you'll get fruit closer to the fall when everyone goes apple picking. Here's another variety of apple, the Macintosh. And the Macintosh also likes full sun, $36.98, and these are 4.5 gallons, and they get 20 to 30 feet in height and in width, hardy down to zone 4. And a weeping willow, such a stunning tree. You often see them at the edges of lakes and so forth. That's because willows, again, like we said, like water, right? So full sun, $39.98 for this 4.5 gallon, and they get really large at 75 feet in height by 50 feet in width, and hardy down to a zone 6. Such a whimsical tree. And some interesting varieties of birch. This one is a white-barked Himalayan birch. Now, these are beautiful trees for winter interest because you get this really pretty peeling bark. This here is $44.98 for 4.5 gallon. It likes full sun, and it gets to be 25 by 25 in height and width, and hardy down to a zone 5. And river birch. I actually planted a river birch in our garden in a spot that stays pretty wet because river birches also can do okay in some moist soil. This one says that it's a feature tree and they are $39.98. Full sun, and it gets 40 to 60 feet in height and 40 feet in width. Hardy down to zone 3, so very hardy, and it also gets that really beautiful peeling bark. Well, that brings us to the end of the March inventory here at Lowe's. I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what my store has in stock, and I also hope that you can find some of these varieties near you. Here is what I'm picking up today: the Dahlia Seattle and the Dahlia Melina. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button. Also, have you subscribed yet? It's completely free. When you hit the subscribe button, it lets YouTube know that you enjoy my videos, so that the next time you come to YouTube, it will recommend some of my videos that you haven't seen before. On my channel, I have a variety of videos, from planting to garden tours and even some shopping for plants and all things gardening related. I hope that you'll subscribe and become part of the Hooked and Rooted community. Let's grow together.